You are 19 years old when the Soviet Union invades, and until then, the most dangerous thing in your life is the ice on the Vuoksi in March. You grow up in Viipuri, the second city of Finland, where your father Aino Lane makes skis in a workshop that smells of birch shavings and hot glue, and where he refuses to sell a pair to anyone he thinks will be bad at skiing. Your mother Helmi teaches piano to children who do not want to learn piano, and has an exact system for what she charges based on how much she likes the parents. Your younger sister Aino is 13 and carves small animals out of scrap wood, badly, with enormous confidence. Your closest friend is Toivo Kanerva, who works at the harbor, has an opinion about everything including subjects he knows nothing about, and lifts weights in a shed behind his house because a magazine told him it would make him taller. It does not make him taller. He measures himself against the doorframe of the shed every Sunday anyway. Kirsti Halonen, the schoolteacher's daughter, has known you since you were both 7, and is the only person alive who can end an argument you are having by simply looking at you. You expect to take over your father's workshop, marry Kirsti, complain about the price of glue until you are old. Then, on the 30th of November 1939, the Soviet Union attacks Finland along the entire eastern border. There is no long buildup for you. There is a radio and then a mobilization order, and then your father standing in the doorway of his workshop, not saying anything for a long time. He fought the Russians in 1918. He has a scar under his ribs he has never explained. When you ask him whether Finland can win, he keeps sanding the ski in his hands. Winning is not the question, he says. The question is how long we can refuse to lose. Before you leave, Aino gives you a small wooden bird she carved herself. One wing is noticeably larger than the other. She says it will keep you safe. You tell her the bird cannot fly straight and therefore cannot be trusted. She makes you take it anyway. Training is short because there is no time. You learn the Mosin Nagant rifle, which is Russian in origin, and which your instructor describes as borrowed. You learn to move on skis carrying full equipment. You learn to build a fire that does not show light. You learn that the army has more men than it has weapons, and that some units are issued rifles from 3 different decades. Finland has no tanks worth the name, almost no aircraft, almost no anti-tank guns. What Finland has is forest, snow, darkness, and men who have spent their entire lives in all 3. Your squad sergeant is Vaino Malinen, 38, from Kuopio, a professional soldier with the patience of a man who has already watched enthusiasm meet reality several times. He gives you 4 rules. Keep your feet dry. Assume nobody at headquarters knows where you are. If Toivo says he has an idea, count to 20 first, and never be the last man across open ground, because the 3rd one is the one they have had time to aim at. The Winter War is not what the newsreels will later make it look like. It is cold beyond anything you have experienced. 40 below, metal takes skin off bare hands, rifle bolts freeze, bread freezes so hard it must be cut with a saw. Men die of the cold without ever seeing a Russian. But the cold is also your ally, and this is the thing the Soviet army has not understood. They have come with tanks and columns and roads. You have come with skis and forest. You learn a word you will use for the rest of the war. Moti. It means a stack of cut firewood. It also means what you do to a Soviet column trapped on a road. Cut it into sections, surround each one, and let winter finish the argument. You are not strong enough to destroy them. You are only strong enough to divide them and wait. Your first action happens at night in a forest north of the isthmus. You move on skis and white overalls through trees so dense the moonlight arrives in pieces. Ahead of you, on the road, there is a stalled Soviet column, its engines running because switching them off means never starting them again. Malinen puts you behind a fallen trunk. You are there for 2 hours without moving. You discover something about yourself in those 2 hours. When you are frightened, you count. Steps, trees, breaths, seconds between one sound and the next. You get to 400 and something before the shooting starts. You never mention this to anyone. Toivo whispers that he has lost feeling in a part of his body he would prefer to keep. Then the attack begins, and it is nothing like the stories. It is noise and light and men running between trees. You fire at shapes. Somebody near you screams in Finnish, and somebody further away screams in Russian, and there is no difference at all in the sound. By morning it is over, and nobody says the word victory. You are simply told to move north and do it again. Walking back past the road, you see them. Soviet soldiers, dozens of them, frozen where they fell, some still sitting upright. Boys from Ukraine and Central Asia dressed for a different climate entirely, sent into a forest nobody had explained to them. You touch the wooden bird inside your coat. The Winter War lasts 105 days. Finland inflicts casualties out of all proportion to its size. The world is astonished. Newspapers in London and New York write about the Finns in the snow, and Finland loses refuses anyway. On the 13th of March 1940, the Moscow Peace Treaty is signed. Finland is not occupied. Finland is not destroyed. Finland simply has to hand over territory, including the whole of the Karelian Isthmus, including Viipuri. You are ordered to withdraw from a city that has not fallen. Nobody has beaten you out of it. You are told to walk out of it and hand it over. The evacuation is one of the strangest things you will ever witness. Over 400,000 Karelians, more than a tenth of the entire population of Finland, pack what they can carry and leave. Farms, churches, graveyards, whole towns emptying in days. Your family goes west on a train packed to the doors. Your father is allowed one crate. He fills it with tools, not clothes, not photographs. Tools. You find them 3 weeks later in a village near Hämeenlinna, living in 2 rooms of a farmhouse belonging to strangers. Your mother has no piano, your father has no workshop, Aino has stopped carving, Kirsti's family has been resettled 60 kilometers away. The war is over and you have lost. For 15 months there is peace and nobody believes in it. Finland rearms. Finland looks for allies and finds that Britain and France cannot help. Sweden will not. And there is exactly one country in Europe willing to sell weapons to a nation on the Soviet border. German troops begin arriving in Lapland under transit agreements. Nobody discusses what this means. Then, on the 22nd of June 1941, Germany invades the Soviet Union. Days later, Soviet aircraft bomb Finnish cities, and Finland enters what it will always call the Continuation War. The continuation, in its own telling, of the War of 1939. Finland is now fighting on the same side as Nazi Germany. Officially, Finland is a co-belligerent, not an ally. Officially, Finland is fighting its own separate war for its own lost land. Finland refuses to attack Leningrad from the north. Finland refuses to cut the Murmansk railway when Germany asks. These distinctions matter enormously to your government. They will matter very little to history. In the summer of 1941, you advance, and it is the only time in 6 years that the war feels like the version in the newspapers. You move fast through country you know. Villages you recognize. Toivo measures himself against the doorframe of every building you occupy and reports the result to anyone who will listen. Malinen tells him the war has not made him taller. Toivo says it is early yet. And in August, your battalion enters Viipuri. You walk into your own street. The workshop is still standing. The door is off its hinges. Inside, there are ski forms hanging on the wall exactly where your father left them, covered in 18 months of dust, and someone has been using the workbench to butcher meat. You stand there for a long time. Toivo appears in the doorway. For once, he does not make a joke. He just says, "We'll bring him back here." You write to your father that night. You tell him the forms are still on the wall. He writes back 2 weeks later. One line, "Don't touch anything. I'll do it myself." Then the advance stops, and the war becomes something else. Finland goes beyond the old border into East Karelia, Soviet territory that was never Finnish, populated by people who are not Finns. The front freezes into trench lines and stays frozen for 2.5 years, longer than the Winter War, several times over, and almost nothing happens. You learn how to survive boredom, which is a genuine skill. You build proper dugouts with stoves. You read. You play cards for cigarettes. You go home on leave and come back. Kirsti writes to you the whole time, and she never once asks how you are. Every letter is about something small and specific: a pupil who will not practice, the price of coffee, a dog that has started following her to school and will not stop. You find this strange for about a year. Then you understand. She is giving you somewhere that is not the war. It is the most useful thing anyone does for you in 6 years. You also do the other thing, because in the occupied territory, Finland runs camps. Civilians of Russian ethnicity are interned, separated from the Karelian population, held behind wire, put to labor. Conditions in the first winter are very bad. Thousands die, most of them from hunger. Your platoon is assigned to a transit camp for 11 days. You stand at a gate. You count people in and out, which is a thing you are apparently good at now. There is a woman about your mother's age who each morning asks you the same question in Russian, which you do not speak, and you never find out what she is asking. On the 4th day, you give a child part of your bread ration. An officer sees you and says nothing at all, which is somehow worse than being shouted at. On the 11th day, you are reassigned and you are relieved. And being relieved is the part you will think about later. Years afterwards, when people describe Finland's war as purely defensive, you will not argue with them. You will just remember a gate and a woman asking a question, and yourself standing there being relieved to leave. The Germans in Lapland are far away, but sometimes they come south. In 1943, a mountain unit is billeted near your position for a month. You share a field sauna with them because there is one sauna and it is not going to be wasted on national politics. There is a corporal called Rudy from Bavaria who is 23 and who explains at length that in Bavaria they have a proper way to do this and that Finns are doing it wrong. He then stays in the sauna 40 minutes longer than any of you and has to be helped out. He shows you a photograph of his mother's house. You show him the wooden bird. He examines it seriously and says the wings are wrong. I know, you say. Then why keep it? My sister made it. He nods as though this settles the matter and gives it back. Toivo measures Rudy against the doorframe. Rudy is taller. Toivo takes this very badly. In June 1944, the war returns all at once. The Soviet offensive breaks the front in days. Viipuri falls on the 20th of June. It takes 1 day. At a crossing near Tienhaara, the road jams and somebody has to hold it. Malinen takes 4 men and a machine gun and sets up at the corner. You were easier to command in 1939, he says. Go. The gun fires behind you for a while, and then it stops. Nobody says it out loud, but you were there when he gave you the 4 rules, and you know exactly which one he broke, and you know he knew it while he was doing it. He is never found. You write his name in the back of your paybook and draw a question mark beside it. You never cross it out. At Tali-Ihantala, the Finnish army stops the advance. It is the largest battle ever fought in the Nordic countries, and it is the reason the country survives. Toivo is carried past you with his hand wrapped in somebody's shirt. He loses 3 fingers. 2 weeks later, you watch him walk up to a doorframe out of habit, lift the bandaged hand, and stop. He never does it again. Finland signs an armistice in September and is given 14 days to expel 200,000 German soldiers from Lapland. So you spend the winter fighting the army you stood beside a year ago, and they burn Lapland behind them as they go. You walk into Rovaniemi in October. It is not a town anymore. It is chimneys standing in rows. You start counting them because that is what you do. You get to 41 and you stop. There is no home to go back to. The state gives your father 4 hectares taken from somebody else's farm. He is 61. He builds the workshop before he builds the house. You marry Kirsty in 1947. At the end of the evening, Toivo, drunk, goes to the doorframe and measures himself with the wrong hand. Aino dies in 1981. Among her things is a second wooden bird, the same uneven wings, newer wood. Underneath it, a note in a 13-year-old's handwriting. The first one will get lost. He is careless. She carved 2 in 1939 and kept one for 42 years without ever mentioning it. Your father taught you that a ski is made by bending. You steam the wood until it accepts a shape it did not have before, and then you hold it until it stops fighting. It does not forget it was straight. It simply stops trying to go back. That is what happened to the country and to you.